In this video, we're going to be talking about a very useful concept in Objective-C and every other programming language, which is called a for statement, or with the for loop. So Objective-C for loop. What you can do is you can use this loop to actually perform repetitive tasks. So let's read through what we've written here. Computers are great at performing repetitive tasks, and that is why we use them. For example, if you want to write a program that outputs number 1 to 1000, it will be very time consuming and unwise to write out any 1000 nslog statement. So remember, this is the only way you know how to write out message to the console. So if you want to write number 1 to 1000, so it will be very unwise to write it like this, because you have to create 1000 nslog statement. This is why we have loops in programming language, and the one we are looking at here is called the for statement, or the for loop. So let's write a program that outputs number 1 to 10. So we can create it like this, like I said before, which is kind of stupid, and we can keep going, but this will be cumbersome, especially if you have to do that 1000 times. So let's use a for loop to fix that. So what we do is we declare a counter. In most programming language, we use the letter I to denote this counter, and this is how you create a for loop. This is exactly how a for loop works. So you declare a variable here called counter. This is the one that you use to count from 1 to 1000, just to check if the number has reached 1000 yet. So inside the for loop, you say counter equals to 1. You initialize the value of counter. You can start this counter from any number depending on what you're trying to do. For example, if you're writing a number that will count from 10 to 1, you want to count backwards from 100 to 1. So what you do is you initialize the counter to 100, so that the first number you're dealing with is 100. So depending on what you're trying to do, don't worry, I'm still going to show you an example so you understand completely what I'm trying to do here. Then you check the counter. You create a Boolean expression to check if the counter that you're using to count, for example, if counter is at 3, you will check if it's still less than 100, because remember, you're only going up the way to 100. If the counter becomes 101 or 102, you want to make sure that you get out of the loop, because you don't need 100. So this is why you need to keep check on the value of counter. So counter is less than or equals to 100, and then you need another statement to actually increase the value of. So you start counter from 1, you check if it's still less than 100. Yes, 1 is less than 100. Then you increase the value to 2. Then you check again, is 2 less than 100? Yes, then you increase the value to 3. Is 3 less than 100? So you keep performing your operation. This is the operation that's going to be performed. You're going to be writing out the value of counter each time. Let's do an example. Let's look at an example so you can understand exactly what this is all about. So this is a very simple for loop statement, and just like I show you. So now let me run this program so you can see the result of it. So if I run the program, as you can see, it writes number from 0 to 10. If I increase this to 50, it's going to write out the number, and it takes 1 to 2 seconds, as you see, actually less than a second, to write the number 0 to 50 on the screen. So what we're doing now, let me explain how for loop works. So we declare an integer counter and we initialize it to 0. So we want to start at 0 this time. If I decide to start at 1, I will initialize, actually let me start at 5, so that you can see that you can initialize it at anything you want. So as you can see here now, the first value that was printed on, so the first value that we need is 5. So this is what happened. The counter is initialized to 5. Then we check if counter is less or equals to 50, and that is true. When that is true, then this code will be executed. So that means we'll print that value of, remember, this is a placeholder for counter, that means we print out 5. Then after printing out, it jumps here and it checks, and it increased the value of 5 by 1, counter plus plus. So after increasing the value of counter by 1, then check the value again. Remember, this only happened once. the initialization happen once. After it's happened, then it doesn't go back to it again, but the rest of them actually happens throughout the lifetime of the for loop. So now that the value of counter is 6, then it checks again, is counter less than or equals to 50? Of course 6 is less or equals to 50. Yeah, that's true. Then it prints out 6 again. After printing out 6, it increases the value of counter by 1, becoming 7. Is 7 less than or equals to 50? Yeah, that's correct. Then it prints out 7 again. After printing out 7, then it increases the value of counter by 1, becoming 8. Then it can continue doing that in this cycle. It continue doing it until counter becomes 50. Then its counter is 50 less or equals to 50? That's correct. It's going to print out 50. Then it's going to check. After that, it's going to increase the value of 50, counter by 1, becoming 51. Then it will check, is 51 less or equals to 50? That is not true. Then it's going to break out of the for loop, as you can see here. So let me show you that it's valuable, it's important to. So if you remove equals to, you say counter is less than 50, so that means 50 will not be printed. So let's try that. It's going to be from 5 to 49. As you can see, the last number is 49, because once the value of counter becomes 50, it's going to check, is 50 less than 50? No, that's not correct. 50 is not less than 50, so it's going to break out. So you have to watch your initialization and your Boolean expression here to make sure that you're arriving at the reason why we usually start counter at 0. Most program what they do is they will start counter at 0. It's because of when we're going to start looking at arrays, because arrays index start at 0. Don't worry about that at the moment, but just focus on your initialization of the for loop and the Boolean expression here. And even this one as well, you can modify. It doesn't have to be counter plus plus. You can always say counter equals to counter plus 2 if you're trying to print out every 2 numbers. For example, you want to print out 2, 4, 6, 8, or you want to print out, I'll show you a couple of examples how to do this thing. So I'll see you in the next video.